child, Italian as a child. She had a very broad travel education. And the other thing she got to do when she was over there in Europe is visit the great art museums of Europe, like the Louvre in Paris. And that's when she first was introduced to art as a child, and she loved it right from the start. At that time, 150 years ago, there were no art museums in the United States. People had small private art collections, but places that you could actually go to and look at art, those didn't exist yet. We've made up for lost time. We have some of the great art museums of the world today, but 150 years ago, if you wanted to see art done by the great masters of the past, like Rembrandt, you needed to get on a ship and go to Europe like her family did when she was a young girl. Well, as a teenager, she tells her parents, I want to be an artist. They were shocked. What kind of job is that for a young woman? But they let her go to what was then the best art school in Philadelphia, and still is today. And after art school, she says to her father, I need to move to Paris. You know, you've heard me say this before. It was the center of the art world back then. And she knew it. She knew that if she was going to become the very best artist she could be, she needed to go to Paris. So her father let her go. She did take her sister with her, Lydia. We're going to see a couple of paintings of Lydia in a few minutes. Lydia was not only her sister, but it was her best friend. So they were great companions for each other. This is what Paris was like when she moves there. She would have had a very nice apartment. She didn't have to worry about cooking or cleaning or doing grocery shopping. She had servants for all of that. I'm sure her family gave her a generous monthly allowance to cover all of her expenses. Let me show you a painting of what Paris would have been like back then. This painting is by a French artist. It's not by Mary Cassatt, but I wanted to give you a closer look at the people and how they were dressed. Notice what everyone is wearing. Hats. Every single person, I believe, in this painting has a hat on. This man, he took the hat off, but he's got it in his hand. Top hats, even the children walking on the sidewalk, it looks like their grandparents behind them, have hats. Women would have collections of hats. Many men had top hats. I mean, babies wore bonnets. You'd often go to school in the morning wearing a hat, and then of course you took it off when you got to the classroom, but you put it back on at the end of the school day. Hats were a big fashion item, and I mentioned that, as you can see in this picture. Okay, before she goes to Paris, this is how Mary painted. Pretty much standard for the time. More realistic detail, mostly darker colors, very formal, very imposed. Those were the rules of painting at the time. Something else, you don't see any brush marks, any brush strokes. But the world changed when the Impressionists came along. Now, these are only two of the Impressionists. It was a much larger group of about 15. She sees their art and is amazed. She becomes very, very good friends with Edgar Degas. They became lifelong friends. Look at the way he's dressed. Do you think he was wealthy as well? Yes. He was. So it's kind of interesting that of all of the Impressionists, she is drawn and becomes good friends with one of the few wealthy people in that group. Most of them, like Claude Monet, for instance, came from working class backgrounds. So he didn't grow up wearing fancy clothes like that. But Edgar Degas did. His family were bankers in Paris. There was plenty of money. So they became best friends. She loved his work. He loved her work. What she noticed about his work, he liked to show movement in his paintings. The world of ballet, the world of horse racing, with the jockeys on the backs of horses racing around the racetrack. And when you see his paintings, none of them had formal pose looks. They were all kind of casual, unposed. She saw that about his paintings and noticed it. And then she sees the artwork of Monet and some of the other Impressionists, and she noticed he's all about color. He would go outdoors and paint very quickly, capturing the shadows and the sunlight colors as they were right then. And so he had to work quickly, and he left his brush strokes showing because that didn't matter to him. She noticed that about his work, and she noticed his bright colors, his rainbow colors. And so all of this helped make her change the way she painted. They were so impressed with her art that they invited her to join them. She was one of the few women who were part of the Impressionist group. There were 2 or 3, depending upon how many you count. She was the most important one of all the women artists. And she was the only American artist who was part of the group. All the rest were French. So it was quite an honor for a woman and an American to get invited to join this group. But Mary Cassatt was good enough that she was able to join them and become an Impressionist. That's not what they called themselves, by the way. They hated that word. They preferred the word independent artists. But that word Impressionist was given to them by a newspaper art writer, critic, and that word stuck. So now, of course, today it's a good word, and that's what we call them. Well, let me show you how much her work changed before she went to Paris and after she met the Impressionists. Look at the difference. On the left is before, on the right is after she started looking at the artwork of the Impressionists. Which one is more colorful? Left or right? Right. Which one is more casual, relaxed? Left or right? Well, you know what? If you think about what the mother is doing, she's sewing. Is she looking in our direction? No. This looks like a sneaky picture. It looks like Mary has just walked into the room. Only the little girl looks up. The mother's busy sewing. This is not a formal pose painting. The girl playing the mandolin, that was formal and pose. So look at the huge difference in the way she was painting before Paris and after she meets the Impressionists, after she moves to Paris. It really changed the way she painted. Let's look at young mother sewing up close. I've got 2 words up here, composition and overlapping, and I got a bunch of arrows because she wanted her eyes to walk through the painting and the way she arranged things, which is what we call composition. There are no rules, and artists can arrange things however way they want. Another artist who had a more formal pose look would have put the little girl over here, standing straight and tall, looking ahead. The mother not sewing. That's a more casual, relaxed activity. She would have been wearing nicer clothes, not her work clothes, and she would have been looking straight ahead. So this is like one quick moment in the life of that woman during the day, a hardworking mother. Overlapping. She wanted to show you the bond between the mother and child. So you'll see a lot of overlapping, one in front of the other, to give you that closeness, to give you the feeling of love between the mother and child. I'm sure it would have been a lot easier for the mother to do her sewing without the girl all over her lap like that. But mothers, they don't mind because they love their children. I remember when my children were that age and I'd be sitting down doing something. Of course, that's when they came over and asked me a million questions. Can I help? Can I help? What are you doing? What are you doing? Can I see? Can I see? I remember that well. And it sometimes could be a little bit annoying, but I didn't mind because those were my daughters. And it was all part of the mother's love for her child. And that's what we see in this painting. So we see that bond by that casual, relaxed pose. Then composition, the way she wanted your eye to look at the painting. I don't know about you, but I'm going to start looking at the girl's face. And she's the only one looking in our direction. Now notice her